Admiral stood at the observation window of Terminus 7 station, watching distant stars flicker in the void. Behind him, the negotiation chamber buzzed with alien voices speaking in dozens of languages. He had been standing in that same spot for 8 months now, watching his human delegation try to make peace with species that did not want peace. They wanted submission. Captain approached him quietly, holding a data pad. Her face was tight with controlled anger. "Sir, intelligence just confirmed it. The fleet is positioning itself near our border colonies. They're not here to negotiate. They never were." Nodded slowly. He had suspected as much for weeks now. Then their allies kept adding more demands to the peace treaty. Every time the humans agreed to something, the aliens wanted more. It was a pattern he recognized from his study of Earth's ancient history. This was not diplomacy. This was a game designed to make humanity surrender without firing a single shot. Inside the chamber, Ambassador was speaking again. He was a good man, thought. A peaceful man who truly believed that words could solve any problem. The Admiral that faith, even as he knew it was misplaced here. "We can accept the reduction in military vessels," was saying, his voice calm despite the insult. "But we cannot abandon our colonies. These are worlds where millions of humans have built homes, raised families. Surely you can understand." Cut him off. The leader was tall, with blue skin and 4 arms that he kept folded in a gesture that humans had learned meant contempt. "What we understand, Ambassador, is that your species discovered space travel barely 150 years ago. You are children playing with adult technology. The galaxy has existed for millions of years without you. It will continue just fine if you learn your place." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the alien delegates. The representatives clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their kind. The delegate, a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish, pulsed with colors that their translators interpreted as amusement. Felt his jaw tighten. He glanced at who was gripping her data pad so hard her knuckles had turned white. High Archon of the Empire rose from his seat. His insect-like body towered over the table. "Let us be clear about the situation. You have 600 worlds. The Galactic Assembly controls 40,000. Your fleet consists of 4,800 vessels. We can field 15,000 without even calling in reserve forces. The mathematics are simple even for your young species. We are offering you generous terms," continued. "Surrender 12 colony worlds. Reduce your military by more than half. Cease all expansion beyond your current borders for 200 years. Pay annual tribute to compensate us for the trouble of dealing with your aggressive expansion, and accept our guardians on your worlds to ensure you follow these agreements." His face had gone pale. "These terms, they would cripple our civilization. We would be at your mercy for generations." "Yes," said simply, "that is the point. You need to learn that the galaxy does not revolve around humanity." The chamber fell silent. Even the translator devices seemed to hold their breath. Watched his ambassador struggle for words, saw the man realize that 8 months of negotiation had been a complete waste of time. Stood, his 4 arms spreading wide. "We give you 24 hours to accept these terms. If you refuse, you will face the combined military might of the Galactic Assembly. Every one of our member species will join the war against you. Your 600 worlds will burn. Your colonies will be occupied. Your people will serve us in ways far worse than these generous terms suggest." He paused, his black eyes scanning the human delegation. "You cannot win. You are outnumbered and alone. You can only choose how many of your people die before you surrender. Choose wisely." Pushed away from the window, he crossed the chamber in long strides, his military boots echoing on the metal floor. The alien delegates watched him approach with expressions that ranged from curiosity to contempt. They saw a soldier in a pressed uniform, a relic of a primitive species that still settled disputes with violence. They did not see what was really coming. The Admiral stopped in front of. He was shorter than the by 2 feet, but something in his posture made the alien lean back slightly. "Admiral," said quietly, a warning in his voice, "please." Ignored him. He looked up at, then slowly let his gaze travel across every alien face in the chamber. A species that had existed for thousands of years, that thought their age made them wise. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, conversational. The chamber had to strain to hear him. "We came here in good faith. We offered compromise. We tried to find common ground. For 8 months we have listened to you insult us, dismiss us, treat us like children who need to be taught a lesson." He turned in a slow circle, making sure every delegate could see his face. "You look at humanity and see a young species. You see 600 worlds and think that makes us weak. You count our ships and believe numbers tell the whole story. You mistake our desire for peace as fear of war." Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Let me tell you something about humans. We spent 200,000 years on our learning how to survive. We climbed out of caves and built civilizations. We fought ice ages, plagues, predators, and each other. We died in millions and we kept going. We failed 1,000 times and we learned from every failure. His voice grew harder. We reached for the stars because we dreamed of finding friends out here. We hoped the galaxy would be full of species we could learn from, trade with, share our stories with. We wanted peace because we know the true cost of war. He stopped in front of again. But make no mistake, we know war. We are very, very good at it, better than you can imagine. We just choose not to be. We choose to be peaceful. We choose to negotiate. We choose to compromise. Smile vanished. You have mistaken our choices for weakness. You have taken our patience for cowardice. You have pushed and pushed and pushed, expecting us to break. You thought wrong. He turned to Ambassador. We're done here. Stood slowly, his face pale but resolved. Captain gathered their materials. The rest of the human delegation rose from their seats. If you walk out that door, said, his voice tight with anger, you choose war. Admiral stopped at the threshold. He did not turn around. No, you chose war the moment you decided humanity was weak enough to bully. We're just accepting your choice. The human delegation walked out. Behind them, the chamber erupted in chaos. Alien voices shouted, argued, threatened. But the humans kept walking, their footsteps steady and sure. In the corridor, Grab's arm. Do you know what you've just done? They'll destroy us. Looked at his friend with sad eyes. No, they'll try. And then they'll learn why humans don't like to fight. It's not because we're afraid of losing. Then why? Because we're afraid of winning. The Admiral walked away, already composing orders in his mind. Behind him, through the walls of Terminus 7, he could hear the alien delegation still shouting. They thought they had won. They thought humanity would come crawling back within hours, begging to accept the terms. They would learn. The galaxy would learn. And the lesson would be written in stars and steel, in courage and blood, in the terrible certainty that some species should never be pushed too far. The war had begun. The news spread across human space at the speed of light. Within hours, every colony, every station, every settlement knew that the peace talks had failed. Humanity was going to war against an enemy that outnumbered them 25-1. On Earth, in the capital city of New Geneva, President sat in his office watching intelligence reports scroll across multiple screens. His advisors crowded the room, all talking at once. Some wanted to recall the delegation, to accept the terms. Others demanded immediate military action. The president raised his hand and silence fell. "Get me Admiral," he said quietly. The holographic projector activated and his image appeared. The Admiral looked tired but determined. "Mr. President, they're saying you've doomed us. They're saying we should surrender before millions die." "With respect, sir, millions would die either way. At least this way they die free." Nodded slowly. He had expected this answer. He had appointed specifically because the man understood that some things were worth fighting for. "What do you need?" "Everything, sir. Every ship, every soldier, every factory. And I need Doctor to activate the projects we've been hiding." In a research facility buried 3 miles beneath the Australian desert, Dr. Park received the authorization codes she had been waiting for. For 50 years, human scientists had been developing weapons in secret. Not because they wanted war, but because they had learned a harsh lesson from their own history. Hope for peace, but prepare for war. She walked through corridors lined with armed guards until she reached a vault door that required 6 different security checks. Inside, rows of prototype weapons waited in climate-controlled darkness. "Start production," she told her team. "All of them. We're going to show the galaxy what human innovation looks like when we stop holding back." Across human space, the transformation began. Factories that had been producing civilian goods retooled overnight. Shipyards that built cargo vessels started constructing warships instead. Mining colonies increased their output to provide raw materials. Agricultural worlds planted fast-growing crops to feed armies. But it was not just about production, it was about people. Generals stood on a parade ground on Mars, watching fresh recruits march past. They were young, most of them. They had grown up hearing stories about the Great Peace, about humanity's place among the stars. Now they would learn about humanity's other legacy, the warrior spirit that had allowed them to survive everything there had thrown at them. "How many?" her aide asked. 40 million volunteers in the first week, replied. "We're having to turn people away." The aide looked stunned. "That many want to fight." "No," corrected. "That many don't want to live in chains. There's a difference." In orbit above Earth, Lieutenant Commander Sara ran through pre-flight checks on her fighter. The spacecraft was small, barely bigger than an ancient Earth jet, but it was fast and deadly. More importantly, it was designed around human reflexes and human intuition. Her squadron leader's voice crackled over the comm. All wings, this is leader. High Command says they think they'll have this war won in 3 months. They're telling their people that humans are weak, that will fold after the first battle. Sora smiled grimly. Then let's make sure that first battle is one they never forget. 3 weeks after the peace talks collapsed, the Dominion launched its first major offensive. Intelligence had told them that the Tethys system was lightly defended, maybe 100 human ships at most. It was a perfect target for a quick victory that would shock humanity into submission. Himself accompanied the fleet, confident that he would be accepting Earth's surrender within a month. 300 warships entered the Tethys system in a formation that had crushed enemies for 1,000 years. What they found waiting for them made its blood run cold. 1,200 human vessels hung in space, arranged in a pattern unlike anything they had seen before. They were not in neat lines or defensive formations. Instead, they moved in clusters, weaving around each other in a dance that seemed chaotic but was actually precisely coordinated. This is impossible, his tactical officer said. Our intelligence said they only had 4,800 ships total. A quarter of their entire fleet can't be here. Stared at the display. Then our intelligence was wrong. Prepare to. Admiral's face appeared on every screen in every ship. His voice was calm, almost friendly. I'm glad you could make it. You wanted war, you pushed for it. You demanded it. Well, here it is. Welcome to humanity's specialty. The communication cut off. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the human fleet moved. They did not charge forward in a glorious cavalry rush. They did not unleash a massive barrage of missiles. Instead, they simply vanished from sensors. What began? Then his ship lurched violently. Alarm screamed. His tactical display showed 3 human destroyers firing at point-blank range, weapons ripping through shields that should have held. How did they get so close? Someone shouted. Stealth technology, the tactical officer gasped. They're using something that blocks our sensors completely. All across the formation, the same scene repeated. Human ships appeared out of nowhere, struck with devastating precision, then vanished again. The weapons they used were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Missiles that split into thousands of smaller projectiles, each one finding its target, beams that seemed to ignore shields entirely, kinetic rounds moving at impossible speeds. But it was not just the technology. It was the way humans fought. Doctrine was thousands of years old, refined and perfect. Human tactics were chaotic, improvised, unpredictable. Fighters darted in at angles that should have been suicide runs but somehow worked. Destroyers used asteroid fields for cover in ways that violated every rule of space combat. Capital ships coordinated their fire with split-second timing that suggested their crews were reading each other's minds. Lieutenant Commander Sora pulled her fighter through a barrel roll that would have knocked most species unconscious from the G-forces. Her targeting computer locked onto a frigate, and she fired. The ship's shields flickered and died as her weapons punched through. Behind her, 11 other fighters followed the same path, each one exploiting the weakness she had created. This is Alpha Leader, she called out. Their shield generators are on the dorsal hull rear quarter. Hit them there and they fold like paper. The information spread through the human fleet instantly. Within minutes, every fighter pilot knew exactly where to aim. They tried to adapt, tried to protect their vulnerable spots, but it was too late. Humans had found the weakness and were exploiting it ruthlessly. Captain, now commanding a carrier group, watched the battle unfold from her flagship's bridge. She had studied every major space battle in galactic history. She knew how fought, what they expected, what they feared, and she was giving them all of their worst nightmares at once. Sir, the enemy is trying to retreat, her tactical officer reported. Don't let them, ordered. Not one ship escapes. They came here to teach humanity a lesson. Let them learn one instead. Human ships moved to block every escape route. Fighters hunted down fleeing vessels. The quantum disruption fields that Doctor had developed played havoc with faster-than-light drives. Ships that tried to jump to safety found themselves stranded, dead in space, easy targets. His flagship was burning. Half his fleet was already destroyed. The other half was scattered, running, dying. He stood on his bridge, watching humanity's fury unfold, and finally understood the mistake they had made. Open a channel to the human fleet, he ordered. We surrender. No response came. Human ships kept firing, kept hunting, kept killing. Tell them we surrender, shouted at his communications officer. I'm trying, they're not accepting our hails. On his flagship, Admiral heard the surrender requests. He let them play through once, twice, 3 times. Then he opened a channel. You had 8 months to talk. You had every chance to find peace. You chose this. You don't get to quit just because you're losing. Please, said, and his voice cracked. We were wrong, just stop, please stop. His face was stone. Your forces will stand down and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that refuses will be destroyed. Any ship that tries to run will be hunted down. You wanted to see human determination. Now you're seeing it. We don't do half measures, we don't give up, and we don't forget. The Battle of Tethys lasted 14 hours. When it ended, 300 ships had been reduced to debris or captured hulks. Not a single one escaped to tell the tale. But the galaxy learned anyway. Survivors' accounts spread across thousands of worlds. The species that had thought humanity was weak, primitive, easy to bully suddenly realized they had awakened something terrible. Generals' ground forces began landing on colony worlds. They expected resistance. Instead, they found garrisons surrendering the moment human ships appeared in orbit. The soldiers had heard what happened at Tethys. They wanted no part of it. In the halls of the Galactic Assembly, emergency sessions were called. Representatives who had supported the war against humanity suddenly had very different opinions. The Empire mobilized its own fleets, determined to show that they were stronger than the President read the reports and felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. Tethys was just the beginning. The galaxy had pushed humanity into a corner, and now they were going to learn what cornered humans were capable of. The question was not whether humanity would win. The question was what they would become in the process of winning. 6 months after Tethys, the galaxy was learning to fear a species it had once dismissed as primitives. Human fleets struck across 1,000 light-years, appearing where they should not be, winning battles they should not win. Every week brought news of another alien defeat, another proud empire humbled. Captain had been promoted to admiral after Tethys. Now she commanded the Third Fleet, 60 capital ships and 300 support vessels. Her mission was simple: break the supply lines and make them starve. She was very good at her job. The Empire depended on a network of supply stations scattered across their territory. Fuel, ammunition, food, medicine, all of it flowed through predictable routes that had been established over centuries. They had never needed to hide their logistics because no enemy had ever penetrated deep enough to threaten them. Changed that overnight. Her ships did not attack the supply stations directly. Instead, they destroyed the automated cargo vessels that moved between them. They mined the hyperspace lanes that freighters used. They hacked into the navigation network and fed it false data, sending supply ships to empty sectors of space where they would run out of fuel and drift helplessly. Admiral were receiving distress calls from civilian vessels, her communications officer reported. They're running out of supplies. Some of them have children aboard. Jaw tightened. She looked at the tactical display showing dozens of stranded ships. Send rescue vessels. Bring them to our nearest station. Give them food, water, medical care. Then let them go. Her officers looked surprised. Sir, we're not here to murder civilians, said quietly. We're here to teach their leaders a lesson. The best way to do that is to show their people that humans are not the monsters their government said we were. The rescued were treated with dignity and kindness. Human medics treated their injuries. Human engineers repaired their ships. Human supply officers gave them enough provisions to reach safe harbor. Then the humans sent them home with a simple message: your government started this war, not us. The propaganda value was immense. Stories spread across space about the humans who saved lives instead of taking them, about the warriors who fought with honor, who did not target the innocent, who were fierce in battle but merciful in victory. Meanwhile, Commander's special operations teams were painting a very different picture for military forces. Had served in human special forces for 20 years. He had trained in every environment Earth offered, from Arctic tundra to scorching deserts. He had learned to survive where most species would die in hours. His teams infiltrated military installations with frightening ease. They moved through alien territory like ghosts, striking targets and vanishing before anyone knew they were there. Shipyards exploded. Command centers went dark. High-ranking officers disappeared, only to turn up days later as prisoners on human vessels. How are they doing this? A general demanded, staring at reports of 6 more sabotaged facilities. We have security, we have sensors, we have armed guards everywhere. His intelligence officer looked pale. Sir, our security is designed to stop infiltrators. Humans are smaller, faster, and they can hold their breath for minutes at a time. They can survive in temperatures that would kill us. They can go days without sleep. And they're using technology we didn't know existed. Officer was one of the people making that technology work. She sat in a secure facility on Luna, surrounded by quantum computers that hummed with barely controlled power. Her job was to break every code the aliens used, and she was very good at it. Military encryption had been considered unbreakable. It relied on mathematical principles that would take conventional computers millions of years to crack. But quantum systems did not work like conventional computers. They operated on different rules rules they had never imagined. "We have access to their entire communication network," she reported to Admiral during a secure call. "Every message, every order, every tactical plan. They're completely transparent to us." "Can they detect that we're reading their traffic?" "No, sir. We're using passive monitoring only. As far as they know, their systems are secure." Smiled grimly. "Then let's use that. Start feeding their commanders false information. Make them see threats that don't exist. Make them trust intelligence that's completely wrong." Within days, fleets were moving to defend systems that humans had no interest in attacking. They were reinforcing installations that were not under threat while real human targets struck where defenses were weak. Their entire military structure started making decisions based on lies, and they never realized it. Generals' ground campaigns were just as successful, but for different reasons. Where was precise and was invisible was overwhelming. Her Marines hit hard and fast, seizing objectives before the enemy could respond. The Empire had joined the war, confident that their ground forces would succeed where they had failed. Warriors were feared across the galaxy, 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor, strong enough to tear through steel. They had never been defeated in ground combat. It lasted 3 days against human Marines. The battle for III demonstrated everything the galaxy was learning about human ground forces. They had 40,000 warriors dug into fortified positions. They had artillery, air support, and defensive barriers that had held against siege for months in previous wars. Forces numbered only 8,000. Her officers suggested waiting for reinforcements. She refused. "We don't need more soldiers," she said. "We need to show them what determination looks like." The attack began at dawn. Human artillery struck first, but not at the fortifications. Instead, they targeted the ground around them, turning the battlefield into a maze of craters and debris. Then human drones filled the air, thousands of them, each one carrying sensors, weapons, or electronic warfare equipment. They had never fought an enemy that used drones so extensively. Their anti-air defenses could not track them all. For every drone they destroyed, 10 more appeared. The drones did not need to kill, they just needed to blind the sensors and create chaos. Then the Marines advanced. They moved through the cratered terrain like they had trained there for years. They used every bit of cover, coordinated their movements with inhuman precision, and adapted to every countermove before it could take effect. Warriors were strong and tough, but they tired. They needed rest, needed to rotate their forces, needed breaks to maintain combat effectiveness. Human Marines did not stop. They fought for 36 hours straight, pushing forward relentlessly, giving the enemy no time to rest or regroup. "They're not stopping," a commander reported, his voice exhausted. "We kill them and more keep coming. We hold a position for hours and they just keep attacking. Don't they need to sleep?" "They do," his superior replied, "but apparently they need victory more." When the finally broke, it was not because they lost the battle. It was because they could not comprehend an enemy that simply refused to stop fighting. The survivors surrendered, and human medics treated their wounds with the same care they showed to their own people. One officer, his armor dented and his pride shattered, asked his human captor, "Why do you fight this way, like machines that never stop?" The Marine, a young woman named Bora, smiled tiredly. "Because we come from a world that tried to kill us for 200,000 years. We learned that the species that survives is not the strongest it's the one that refuses to quit." The war expanded. The Concordat joined on the alien side. So did 3 other regional powers. The Galactic Assembly mustered 15,000 warships, determined to crush humanity once and for all. President received the intelligence reports and called an emergency meeting of his advisors. "They're assembling the largest fleet in galactic history. They're going to hit us with everything they have." "Where?" General asked. "Terminus Nebula. They think we'll use it as a defensive position." Admiral leaned forward. "They're right, we will, but not the way they expect." 3 weeks later, the Grand Fleet of the Galactic Assembly arrived at Terminus Nebula. It was a massive cloud of gas and dust, radiation levels high enough to disrupt sensors but not high enough to be dangerous, perfect for hiding a defensive force. The alien commanders expected to find scattered human ships, easy to corner and destroy. Instead, they found the entire human mobile fleet waiting for them. Every carrier, every battleship, every destroyer humanity could spare had gathered in the nebula. Admiral had bet everything on this one battle. If they lost here, Earth itself would be defenseless. But he was not planning to lose. The Battle of Terminus began not with a glorious charge but with a single human ship broadcasting a message. "To all vessels of the Galactic Assembly, you have one chance to turn back. What comes next will be a slaughter. We're giving you the choice we never had. Leave now or face the consequences. The alien commanders laughed. How dare these primitives offer them mercy? Then humanity showed them what mercy they had just refused. Human ships struck from every direction at once, using the nebula's radiation to mask their approach. They had seeded the battlefield with nuclear-pumped laser satellites, hundreds of them, all hidden in the gas clouds. They had accelerated asteroids to relativistic speeds, turning them into weapons that hit with the force of nuclear bombs. They had deployed millions of autonomous drones that swarmed around enemy ships like angry bees. But the real devastation came from human coordination. Every ship in the fleet was linked through quantum communication networks that allowed instant tactical updates. They fought not as individual vessels but as a single organism, each part supporting the others, anticipating threats, exploiting weaknesses. Admiral commanded the fighter wings, thousands of small craft darting through the chaos. Lieutenant Commander Sora, now a squadron leader, led precision strikes against enemy command ships. Generals Marines boarded disabled vessels, capturing them before they could self-destruct. The battle lasted 3 days. The nebula glowed with the fires of dying ships. The radiation levels climbed so high that both sides had to rotate their forces just to avoid lethal exposure. The aliens had numbers, but humans had determination, technology, and a fury that came from being pushed too far. When it finally ended, 11,000 alien vessels were destroyed or captured. The human fleet had lost 40% of its strength, but they held the field. The Grand Fleet, the pride of the galaxy, had been shattered. Across alien space, governments panicked. If humanity could do this while outnumbered, what would they do next? The answer came quickly. Human fleets appeared at the edges of and home systems. They did not attack. They just waited, silent and threatening, making it clear that humanity now had the power to destroy the aliens' most precious worlds. The war had turned. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy was about to learn that when you push humans too far, they do not stop until the lesson is completely learned. 2 years. That was how long it took for humanity to break the galaxy's greatest empires. 2 years of battles, sacrifices, and victories that rewrote every military textbook in known space. Now Admiral's fleets surrounded and humanity faced its hardest choice. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the blue-green planet below. Prime, population 40 billion, the heart of an empire that had treated humanity like insects to be crushed. One order from him and the planet would burn. Every weapon in the fleet was charged and ready. Humanity had earned the right to revenge. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface," his communications officer said. He's asking to speak with you personally." Nodded, put him through. The image that appeared on his screen shocked him. Looked like he had aged 20 years in two. His blue skin was pale, his 4 arms hung limply at his sides, and his eyes held a desperate fear that recognized. He had seen it in mirrors during the early days of the war, when he thought humanity might lose everything. Admiral said, his voice barely above a whisper. I am authorized to offer the Empire's complete and unconditional surrender." "I know," replied. "You sent that same message 6 times yesterday, and the day before, and every day for the past week. Then why haven't you responded?" His face was stone. "Because you took 8 months to talk before the war. I figure you can wait 8 days for our answer." Flinched as if struck. "Please, you have won, everyone knows it. They have retreated to their core worlds. They have signed a non-aggression pact with you. 3 other empires have collapsed entirely. You've destroyed 70,000 of our ships. You occupy 200 of our worlds. You can do anything you want to us now." "Yes," said quietly, "we can." The silence stretched between them. Finally, spoke again, and his voice cracked. "We were wrong. We looked at your young civilization and thought you were weak. We saw your desire for peace and believed it was fear. We pushed you and pushed you, never asking ourselves what would happen when humans stopped being patient." He paused, taking a shaking breath. "Now we know. Now the whole galaxy knows. You fight like nothing we've ever seen. You don't follow the rules of war because you don't care about honor or glory. You only care about winning, and you're very good at it. Is there a point to this?" "Yes." Looked directly into the camera, and there were tears in his alien eyes. "I'm not speaking as a now. I'm speaking as a father who has 3 children on this planet. As a person who has seen his entire species brought to the edge of extinction. We beg you for mercy. Not because we deserve it, we don't. But because maybe showing mercy is what separates you from us." Cut the connection. He stood silent for a long moment, then turned to his staff. "Captain wants to know if we're proceeding with the invasion plans." His tactical officer nodded. "Admiral's forces are ready. General's Marines can land within 6 hours. Doctors, new weapons could disable every power grid on the planet in under an hour. We could occupy the entire world in a week." Or asked, The officer hesitated. Or we could glass the planet from orbit in a day, end the species permanently, make sure they never threaten anyone again. Closed his eyes. 2 years ago he would have said the choice was obvious, but 2 years of war had changed him, changed all of them. On Earth, President faced similar pressures. Half his advisors wanted to push for total victory, to make the aliens pay for every human life lost. The other half worried about what humanity would become if they chose genocide. "We've lost 4 million people in this war," one advisor said. 4 million, and they started it. They deserve whatever we give them. "And if we kill 40 billion in revenge," another countered, "what does that make us? How do we look our children in the eye and tell them we're the good guys?" Listened to them argue, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Finally, he raised his hand for silence. "Get me every fleet commander, every ground general, every governor. I want to know what humanity thinks before I make this choice." The responses came in over the next day. Admiral reported from space where her fleets blockaded the empire that had been humanity's most dangerous enemy. "They're broken, sir, completely. Their military is shattered, their economy is in ruins, and their people are terrified. We can do anything we want to them. The question is, what do we want?" General sent a message from occupied territory. "The civilians here are cooperative. They're not our enemies, they're just people who had bad leaders. If we slaughter them, we become the monsters they said we were. If we show mercy, we prove we're better than them." Commander's report was more blunt. "Sir, I've spent 2 years killing our enemies. I'm good at it. But if you order us to commit genocide, I'll follow that order and hate myself for the rest of my life. We joined the military to protect humanity, not to become mass murderers." Captain Sara, now a wing commander, sent a video message. She looked exhausted, her flight suit still stained from her last battle. "I've lost friends in this war. Good people who died because some aliens thought we were weak. Part of me wants to make them pay. But another part remembers why we went to space in the first place. We wanted to find friends out here. Maybe we still can." Officer, who had been reading alien communications for 2 years, submitted a report that shook President to his core. "Sir, I've been monitoring civilian communications across all enemy territories. They're terrified. They think we're going to exterminate them. Their children have nightmares about human ships. Some of them are committing suicide rather than face capture. We've already won the war. Now we need to decide if we're going to win the peace." Doctor's message was simple. "I can build weapons that will let us destroy entire planets. I can create plagues that target specific species. I can design systems that make genocide easy and efficient. But I became a scientist to help people, not murder them. Please don't ask me to use my knowledge this way." President read every message, every report, every plea. Then he called Admiral. "What do you think we should do?" Was silent for a long time. "Sir, I walked out of peace talks because I knew they were trying to break us. I started this war because I believed some things were worth fighting for. We've proven that we can fight. Now we need to prove we know when to stop. Even after everything they did to us. Especially after everything they did to us. If we become monsters to defeat monsters, what was the point?" Nodded slowly. "Then let's show them what humanity really is." 6 hours later, President addressed the galaxy. Every species watched, expecting to hear Earth's demands for unconditional surrender, for tribute, for punishment. Instead, they heard something that shocked them to their core. "People of the galaxy, this is President of Earth. For 2 years we have been at war with species that thought we were weak. They demanded our submission. They threatened our families. They forced us to choose between slavery and war. We chose war because we believed freedom was worth fighting for. We have won that war. Our fleets surround you. Our armies occupy your colonies. We have weapons you can't imagine and the will to use them. We could burn your worlds to ash. We could make you serve us the way you wanted us to serve you. We could make the galaxy remember our revenge for 1,000 generations. But we won't. Not because you deserve mercy. You don't. Not because we're afraid. We've proven we're not. We stop because we choose to. Because humanity learned long ago that power without restraint turns heroes into villains. Because we want to be a species that our children can be proud of. The war ends today, but on our terms. Every species that attacked us will surrender their military fleets. You will accept human oversight of your governments for 50 years. You will pay reparations not to us, but to repair the damage you've caused. You will open your records so the galaxy can see the lies you told about us. But you will not be enslaved. You will not be exterminated. You will be given the chance to rebuild, to learn from your mistakes, to become better than you were. Why? Because 200 years ago, humanity reached for the stars dreaming of making friends. That dream is still worth fighting for, even when it means forgiving enemies who don't deserve forgiveness. We came to the galaxy in peace. You forced us to show our strength. Now we're choosing to show our mercy. Remember both. Remember that humans can be the best friends you'll ever have or the worst enemies you'll ever face. The choice of which we are is up to you." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings sat in stunned silence. The species that could have destroyed them all had chosen mercy instead. It was unprecedented. It was unthinkable. It was the most human thing the galaxy had ever seen. On Prime watched the broadcast and wept. His civilization had been spared by the very species they had tried to break. He did not understand it. He was not sure he ever would. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The humans had proven they could wage war better than anyone. Now they had proven something even more impressive. They knew when to stop. 5 years after the Treaty of New Terminus, the galaxy looked nothing like it had before the war. The great empires that had pushed humanity into conflict were shadows of their former selves. But they were alive, rebuilding, and slowly learning what it meant to be humanity's ally instead of its enemy. Ambassador stood at the observation deck of the rebuilt Terminus station, watching ships come and go. Some were human vessels, sleek and powerful, bearing the marks of a species that had learned to be excellent at war. Others were freighters, passenger liners, survey ships. They moved through space together now, trading, talking, sometimes even cooperating. "Never thought I'd see this," said a voice behind her. She turned to find approaching slowly. He looked older but also somehow lighter, as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. "Neither did I," admitted. She had resigned her military commission 3 years ago to join the diplomatic service. Killing had come easily to her during the war. Peace required much more work. "How are things on Prime?" "Difficult," said honestly. "We're rebuilding, but it's slow. Our people remember what we lost. Some blame you. Some blame our old government. Most just want to move on." "And the new government?" "Better, younger. They grew up hearing stories about the war. They don't want to repeat our mistakes." He paused, looking out at the ships. "Your oversight committee is fair, I'll give you that. Strict, but fair. They catch our corruption before it takes root, stop our militarists before they gain power. In 20 years, when you finally leave us to govern ourselves, I think we'll be ready." Smiled slightly. "That's the idea. We didn't win the war to rule you forever. We just needed to make sure you'd never threaten us or anyone else again." On Earth, President was adjusting to her new role. She had won election 2 years ago in a landslide, the first military officer to lead Earth in over a century. Her experience in the war had given her something civilians could not match. She understood both the cost of violence and the necessity of strength. Her current problem sat on her desk in the form of intelligence reports from the Outer Rim. A new species, were expanding aggressively into unclaimed space. They had ignored 3 warnings from the Galactic Defense Pact to respect agreed-upon boundaries. "What do we know about them?" she asked her intelligence director. "Advanced technology, roughly equal to pre-war standards. Population of about 800 worlds. Militaristic culture. They've been isolated from galactic affairs for the past 200 years, which means they don't know about the war." Frowned. "They don't know about us." "They know humans exist. They know we defeated but they think it was luck or that we caught at a weak moment. They're talking openly about testing, whether humanity deserves its position. Send them a clear message. If they want to test us, they'll regret it. But offer them the same thing we offer everyone else. Join the Defense Pact, open trade relations, and we'll help them develop their worlds. Give them the choice." In the Tethys system, now a major hub of human military operations, Captain Sora oversaw training exercises between human and alien forces. It was strange work. 5 years ago, she had been shooting at ships. Now she was teaching pilots how to fly better. "Again," she called out over the comm, "your formation is too rigid. When you encounter an ambush, you need to scatter and regroup, not try to hold formation." A pilot's voice came back, frustrated. "But our doctrine says—" "Your doctrine got 300 ships destroyed at Tethys," Sora interrupted, not unkindly. "We're here to teach you tactics that actually work. Trust me, okay?" The pilot was silent for a moment, then, "Yes, Commander, we'll try it your way." After the exercise, one of Sora's human pilots approached her. "Does it bother you, training them?" "Every day," Sora admitted. "I lost friends fighting but if we want peace to last, we need them to be able to defend themselves. Not against us, against the next threat, because there's always a next threat." In the research facilities on Luna, Doctor oversaw a very different kind of work. Her weapons development labs had been converted to civilian technology centers. The same brilliant minds that had created weapons of war now focused on technology to improve lives across the galaxy. "We've adapted the quantum disruption field for medical use," one of her researchers explained. It can target cancer cells with precision that's impossible with alien technology. We've already shared it with 17 species. And the stealth coating, being used on civilian ships to protect against pirates. The Concordat specifically requested access to it for their merchant fleet. Nodded approvingly. Good, war taught us how to destroy, peace teaches us how to build, I prefer building. But not everyone had adapted well to the new galaxy. On a dozen worlds, human military veterans struggled with the transition to peace. They had seen things, done things, that would haunt them forever. President had made mental health services a priority, but some wounds were too deep to heal easily. Commander, now retired, worked with veterans who had served in special operations. He understood their struggle because he lived it too. You did what you had to do, he told a young soldier who could not sleep without nightmares. The war was brutal. We all carry scars, but we survived and we made sure our families would never face what we faced. That matters. But the things I did were necessary, said firmly. We didn't start that war. We didn't want it. But once it started, we had to win. And winning meant doing terrible things. That's the burden we carry so our children don't have to. At the new terminus station, a diplomatic reception was. Representatives from dozens of species mingled, discussing trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. 5 years ago, most of these species had been trying to conquer humanity. Now they competed for Earth's friendship. Ambassador moved through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging greetings. She stopped when she saw a new arrival, a delegation from the aggressive species from the outer rim. The ambassador was tall and covered in crystalline scales that caught the light. He surveyed the room with barely concealed contempt. When he noticed, he approached with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Ambassador, I've heard so much about you. They say you were an admiral during the war, that you destroyed entire fleets. I did my duty, replied evenly, just as I'm doing it now by welcoming you to the station. How generous, the said. Tell me, is it true that humanity defeated the Dominion? Yes. Impressive, though I understand they were quite weak by then, past their prime, hardly a fair test of humanity's abilities. The room grew quiet. Other ambassadors stopped their conversations to watch. They knew what was coming. They had seen it before, 5 years ago, when another species had made the mistake of underestimating humans. His expression did not change. The commanded 40,000 worlds and fielded 15,000 warships. They were supported by 5 other major powers. They were not weak. Perhaps, the said dismissively, but you haven't faced a truly modern military. My people have been refining our forces for centuries. We use tactics your species has never encountered. It might be educational, to see how humanity performs against a real threat. Before could respond, stepped forward. His voice was quiet but carried across the room. Please don't. The turned to him, amused. Excuse me. Don't challenge humanity, said. Don't threaten them. Don't even think about testing them. You're afraid of them because they defeated you. My people are not. You don't understand, interrupted, and there was something in his voice that made even the arrogant pause. It's not fear, it's knowledge, experience. We pushed the humans. We thought we were strong. We thought 40,000 worlds could crush 600. We thought their desire for peace was weakness. He stepped closer to his 4 arms spreading in a gesture of earnestness. We were wrong about everything. Humans don't want war. They'll try everything to avoid it. They'll negotiate. They'll compromise. They'll accept insults that would make my people riot. They'll turn the other cheek until you think they have no spine at all. His voice grew harder. And then you push too far. And when humans stop being peaceful, they become the most terrifying thing in the galaxy. Not because they're cruel, they're not. Not because they enjoy war, they hate it. But because they're good at it. Better than any species should be. The laughed, but it sounded forced. You're exaggerating. Am I? Gestured around the room. Ask thee about the Battle of III, where 8,000 human marines defeated 40,000 of their finest warriors. Ask thee about the time human hackers took control of their entire fleet and made their own ships fire on each other. Ask any species here about what happened when they thought humans were weak. He looked directly into the crystalline eyes. We have peace now, a real peace where species trade and cooperate and build together. Humans gave us that peace, even though they could have taken revenge for what we did to them. Don't throw it away because you're too proud to learn from our mistakes. The room was silent. Every alien ambassador there nodded in agreement. They had learned the lesson. They wore their defeat not as shame but as wisdom. The ambassador looked around, seeing the unified stance of species that should have been competing with each other. Slowly, his arrogance faded. I may have been hasty in my assessment. Smiled genuinely this time. We're always happy to welcome new friends to the Galactic Defense Pact. Join us, learn from us, build with us. The galaxy is better when we work together. And if someone refuses that friendship, they asked quietly. Smile did not change, but her eyes grew cold. Then they learned why it's offered. Later that evening, stood alone at the observation deck again. The stars stretched out before her, infinite and beautiful. Earth was visible in the distance, a blue jewel surrounded by the infrastructure of a species that had learned to reach beyond its world. She thought about the war, about the people she had killed, the decisions she had made. She thought about Admiral, who had died 2 years ago, finally at peace after carrying the burden of starting a war he never wanted. She thought about all the humans who would never see this moment, who had sacrificed everything to ensure humanity's survival. Was it worth it? A voice asked. Captain Sora had joined her, looking out at the same view. I don't know, admitted. 4 million humans dead, billions of aliens killed, entire civilizations nearly destroyed, all because some species thought we were weak. But we won, we survived, and we made something better. Maybe, sighed. I just hope future generations remember that we didn't want this. Remember that we tried everything to avoid war. Remember that when we finally fought, we fought not for conquest but for survival. Remember that when we won, we chose mercy over revenge. They'll remember, Sora said confidently. Both the humans and the aliens. This is the kind of history that doesn't get forgotten. Hoped she was right. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about humanity. The species that would do anything for peace was also the species that would do anything to win a war. The species that offered friendship with open hands could also fight with closed fists. The species that valued life above all else was also capable of taking life with frightening efficiency. It was a contradiction that defined humanity. They were warriors who hated war, conquerors who refused to conquer, victors who chose mercy over revenge, and the galaxy was better for it. Somewhere in the distance, a new human colony ship launched toward an unclaimed system. Its passengers were families seeking new homes, scientists eager to study alien worlds, entrepreneurs looking for opportunities. They were the reason the war had been fought. They were the proof that humanity's dream, to reach the stars and make friends, was still alive. The war was over, peace had been won, and humanity stood watch, ready to defend that peace against any threat while hoping desperately that they would never need to fight again. Because they remembered the cost. They remembered every life lost, every sacrifice made, every choice that still haunted their dreams. They remembered what it took to push them to war. And they made sure the galaxy remembered too. The lesson had been taught, the price had been paid, and in the silence of space, among the stars humans had dreamed of reaching, peace finally had a chance to flourish.